Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Christianity has been banned under the rule of the Islamic State group in Iraq. Today we look at conditions for Christians who've been forced out of Mosul. Sitting in for Malika Bilal one last time this week. Omar Bada is our digital producer today. This is a big story that's resonated around the world. What are you seeing? What do you have for us?
It really has. It has resonated as far from Iraq as here in Washington, D.C., where there was a demonstration in front of the White House of people who are trying to raise awareness about what is happening to Christians in Iraq. Our own stream team actually went out and met with them and talked to some of them and check out what they've had to say.
There have been Christians living in Mosul for 2,000 years, and now there aren't any. I mean, this is a tragedy not just for Christians, but for Iraq, for everybody.
We don't have not many Christians left in Iraq. So we're gonna die out in Iraq.
I think all Iraqis and the international communities need to be held accountable for the massacre of the Christians of Iraq.
My grandmother said, I packed my bag ready to flee to the north of Iraq where it's much safer.
For those of you at home, if you have stories from the ground, be sure to send them to us. And if you have any suggested solutions for dealing with the problem of Iraqi Christians, be sure to tweet them to us also using the hashtag AJStream.
Now in the studio, as part of this conversation, we have Sinan Antoon. Sinan is an Iraqi author, poet and associate professor at New York University. Sinan, it's great to have you here in the stream.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll hear more from you in just a minute.
Hi, my name is Shehla. I am an activist and I'm in the street.
When the Islamic State group took the city of Mosul in Iraq, the Christian community there was given some very tough choices. Leave, convert to Islam, or pay a tax known as jizya in exchange for protection. Failing to choose one of these options meant death. The last of the Christian families in Mosul fled to neighbouring cities, leaving everything behind. But this is not the very first time that they've been forced out of their communities. Since the 2003 US-led invasion, waves of attacks against them have seen their numbers dwindle. So what are the conditions for those who fled Mosul, and what are the chances that Christians will ever be able to return to their homes there? To help us talk about this, we're also joined by Yunadem Kana. He's a Christian member of Iraq's parliament from the Assyrian Democratic Movement, and Kaudo Ogana is an Iraqi Christian. It's great to have you all here in the stream. Let's start with Kaudo. Kaudo, you spent some time in Mosul, so I know you've been following the story there. Can you give us an example of what's been happening to people who are Christians in that city?
When the ISIS invaded Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, the Christian family fled toward Nineveh Plain, and some of them to Kurdistan region. Some of these families, while they fled from Nineveh, from Mosul city, they fled with clothes. They didn't let anybody to take anything from his home. The money, they took cars, they took everything, and even accessories. They took it. So they fled with their clothes just.
Sure. I've got an example of this. We were speaking to a woman called Zena who used to live in the city of Mosul, and she told us what happened when she had to go. July the 19th was the cutoff point. Noon, had to be out of the city if you're a Christian. She told us what happened when she hit the checkpoint. Have a listen to this.
They asked me for money, mobiles. When I told them I don't have anything, they said, "You are a liar." They took my handbag and searched all our bags, threatened to call my brother and put knife on his hand.
So there's something that's quite disturbing about this. It almost seems biblical in the way that people are being forced out of the second city of Iraq. Sinan, when you first saw this story, what did you think about it?
It's not about thinking. I was very sad, of course, but as I said, this is the culmination of patterns of lawlessness, of militia culture that have been happening since 2003 progressively. Something similar on a smaller scale happened years ago when, at the time, the Islamic State of Iraq, I saw the YouTube video, was on the streets of Mosul and stopping neighborhoods. So all of this has been happening for a very long time, and frankly, neither the response of the sectarian political regime in Baghdad has ever been serious, nor the international community. So it's every once in a while the international community notices this problem and then forgets after a few seconds. I'm wary of using biblical and using large words like genocide. This is, as the other guest said, this is happening to all Iraqi minorities and everyone else. It's basically about a sectarian state that has failed to achieve anything. It cannot provide its citizens with security. It doesn't have a functioning police force. It has a sectarian, problematic army that cannot even fight to defend its borders. So all of this, sadly, was actually predictable. And we knew 3-4 months ago when ISIS was taking large parts of Syria and Western Iraq that they were saying that they were going to move, and nothing was done to stop them.
Give us a moment, because I want to just check in with the community, and then I'll come back to you, because there's a lot of ideas that you just shared with us just right there.
Interestingly enough, there are people who are disputing the description that Iraqi Christians were forced to flee. We have Al-Walid here who says they chose to flee, they weren't forced. Get your facts right and at least pretend to appear neutral. And we have Sak here who says they just have to abide by the law of the Islamic State, that's all. They don't have to fear anything if they just abide by the law. Nadim, I know that this affects obviously a lot of minorities. When you make life miserable enough for someone, you pretty much are forcing them to leave. Can you describe what life would be for minorities under the Islamic State?
Yeah, before I would like to correct Mr. Organa say genocide. I say it is ethnic religious cleansing in Iraq, and especially in that line between the KRG and Iraqi parts, other parts. So it's just over 900 kilometers. All minorities, Yazidis and the Shabak and the Turkmen and Christians and the Failis, all are on this line. And the bad thing is that underground there is oil. So people are fighting so-called dispute area and Article 140 area. So this will be for decades unstable if there is no international intervene in this region and some let's say protection zone or protected zone, or let's say some protection for those communities in this land. And you ask about that. This is a product of policies. Yes, you are right, of sectarianism. But again, I will say it's a kind of push from somewhere, not to have a stable state. There is no law of order, and there is no law there. There is no government power there. It is only militia, as you said, and this is a result of this 11 years, what we have planned and what the Americans, has, I can say, managed. And at last, in Mosul city itself, there were many reasons. One, Baghdad and Mosul and Erbil were command and responsible of what happened there. All three were there. So when there is no one commander in some region or joint coordination between them, you will have this result. That's one. Second, federal police were so bad sometimes on the street. I can say they recruit people against the government, they make people hate the government. That's second point. And third point, we say in Arabic accent, we say papers are mixed, khalt al-awraq. So now some people think they are supporting revolutionary or uprising of Sunnis and this and that, but it is not that.
Okay.
Looters and thugs of Mosul joined ISIS. All the looters and thugs of the city now, they are controlling the street and they are doing every bad thing in the Mosul.
So
that's why now the people of Mosul will uprise very soon against Daesh, against ISIS.
Okay, yeah. Let me just bring in Sinan. Sinan, I feel like you might have some pushback there.
The larger picture is, and I was never a fan of the Saddam regime, and I wrote against it. The big picture is, in 2003, a functioning state, no matter how horrible, was dismantled, and what the US put in place is something that does not function. Who trained the Iraqi army? Who trained the Iraqi police? There is another issue that we have to bring into the conversation, which is the corruption of the so-called reconstruction of Iraq, in which billions and billions of dollars disappeared and went into American and Iraqi pockets, and there is nothing to show.
So slow down a moment. Okay, so I'm listening to this. I'm watching a program about Christians being forced out of certain cities in Iraq, and then you're telling me about reconstruction. Join the dots.
Well, you dismantle a state, meaning, you overthrow a dictator, that's fine, that's great, but dismantling a state means all the institutions in society are dismantled and they are not put back in place. So you don't have a state that cannot defend its citizens.
Right.
Of course, minorities suffer more usually, but the state that cannot the definition of a state is that it monopolizes violence.
So this is America's fault. What's happening right now in Iraq
yes,
is
partly it's America's fault. And we've seen this story before when Western militaries go into a place and then leave without. This is what happened in colonialism. Sorry, I have to say it. You dismantle a certain way of living and organizing life, and you put something else in its place that's bloody and that does not function. Right. I'm not saying it's only America's fault, but you can't dismantle a state and then put chaos in place.
All right, let's just check in with the community.
We actually have people echoing that particular sentiment. You said you were not a fan of the Saddam regime, but things may have been better. Rima here says Christians were probably looked after more under the Saddam Hussein regime than now. This speaks volumes to how bad things are in Iraq. And we also have Abdul here who says Americans should have remained in Iraq to avoid this current problem. Yunadim, what do you make of that sentiment? Is that actually a widespread sentiment in Iraq today, that there are some people who even prefer to have American troops on the ground in Iraq?
Yeah, but not that percentage, very small percentage one, but nobody is willing to have foreign forces in Iraq. But it was a big mistake from government. It was a kind of auction between themselves, how soon they have to kick out the American forces from Iraq, which was a big mistake. And I would like to say that we have not to make Americans like we hang everything on Americans, because when we were fighting each other before 14 centuries, there were no Americans. When Imam Hussein was beheaded, there was no Americans. When there was crisis between Karamita time. So we have not to hang, but Americans failed in finding some solutions.
Okay.
And
all right, so I hear that. We hear that loud.
Not that much patriotic leaders.
All right, so I hear that point loud and clear. Gentlemen, I'm just going to remind you that we're talking about a humanitarian crisis as well, okay? Yes. So I'm going to get back to a woman who's talking to Ishtar TV, who said that actually if she'd had a little bit more help from her neighbours, she might still be in her home. Have a listen to this.
النبي قال الكلمة الطيبة صدقة. نحن هالكلمة ما استمعناها منكم. مو نحن أخوتكم، مو نحن خدمناكم، مو نحن درسناكم، مو نحن عالجناكم. هو هذا الشيء؟ هي هاي تاليتها؟ أنا البارحة الرجال دا أشتري منه ثاني يوم يطردني. هو هذا؟ أقول لك هي الخيانة لو ما صارت من داخل الموصل ما كان وصلنا لها المواصل. أنا لو جيراني واقف وياي، لو الموظف قاعد وياي واقف وياي ما كنت أطلع من الموصل. عندي شخص بظهري، بس هنا ما تعرف صديقك من عدوك، إلما نظل بالموصل.
So Unizem, this isn't about Americans. This is about Iraqi neighbor next to Iraqi neighbor. What is going on where actually neighbors for years and years and years are actually not helping?
Excuse me, this is not the majority in Mosul or anywhere else.
Right.
Maybe some incident somewhere, some thugs and thieves. Just before few minutes I said that thugs and thieves, right away they joined Daesh, they joined ISIS. Majority of people in Mosul were good with each other. Sometimes during the 2007 and 2008, the Muslim was going to the Christian house and guard it like a guard, taking care of his house, taking care of his neighbor. That's not everywhere. Maybe some incident somewhere happened. She's right, but the other one also is right. And this group of ISIS are not Islam. They are out of Islam. Thanks God. All Salafis of Egypt and Gulf, they deny them. They said those are not from us. Okay. They are out of Islam principles, out of Sunnah Nabawiyah, out of Quran principles. So you cannot take. Yeah, she's right. Some people, as I said, poor people, and like I can say, out of the majority. She's right, and that's happened in Mosul.
Okay, Zena.
You know, when the social fabric disintegrates, when the social contract collapses, things like this, which are horrible, happen everywhere. They happened in Europe, in Bosnia, when Christians did the same thing to their Muslim neighbors. It happened in the United States in the 50s when people used to lynch people and take their kids to watch that. So let's not go into civilizational and cultural arguments, because that is not really useful for understanding.
Sure.
When the social fabric disintegrates, human beings do horrible things, unfortunately. How did the social fabric in Iraq disintegrate? Dictatorship and wars, yes, but military occupation ruins the lives of people. One other thing, it's really also useless to keep talking about 14 centuries. Everyone does that. This is about the last 3 decades. Even if this takes religious idiom, this is about power and politics that sometimes takes the guise of religion. This is not about 14 centuries ago. This is about the last 3 or 4 decades.
All right, I'm going to talk about this week, okay? Caldo, this week, what's happening to some of the people who are actually moving, are having to move from their homes and going out as basically displaced people in their own country. Where are they going to? What do you know about their stories? Caldo.
I just want to add something here. It's not about individuals.
Sure.
The neighbor, they cannot protect the Christian families because themselves, they cannot protect themselves from ISIS, because ISIS, they don't care about Christian or he's Christian or they are Muslim. So tomorrow they have something, they will bloody, let's say, event they are doing in Mosul. So the matter is about the innocent people, the minorities, how to protect the minorities. This city was since 1,400 years together. They were living together, minorities with Muslims, Kurds, Turkmen, and Yazidis, etc. So now there is another, let's say, direction for the government, for the Iraq, let's say. After 2003, we was happy that all the sectors will be together in one government, and no one will ignore it. But the direction was wrong. Let's say they create a sectarian government.
Okay.
And if we talk about the government,
I want to come right up to date now, because the show timing always runs away with us. I'm going to bring us right up to date now and work out what is happening for these displaced people. So let me go back to UNIDEM here. I'm looking at this headline here on my laptop. Iraq allocates 850 million for displaced citizens. What about protection, UNIDEM? You're a Christian Iraqi. How safe do you feel?
Yeah, first of all, the allocations, it's 500 billion dinar, which is $450 million, 1 million dinar per each family, but for all, from Ramadi and Tikrit and everywhere, Diyala and Nineveh. That's one. Second, you said, where are they going? They are all almost integrated for temporary in some Nineveh plain small towns, and in Erbil and in Kawa and in Dohuk villages as well. So at the same time, I would like to add, we were very disappointed of the French authorities calling them to immigrate to France. This is supporting those who are pushing us out, ISIS or others agendas. So you have international community has to support, to stay there, to keep together in the homeland, and to take care of this ISIS. ISIS is over. They will cross the borders everywhere if our neighboring country don't coordinate and don't support us. Tomorrow is everywhere.
But Iraq can't take care of ISIS. Why would you expect the international community to take care of ISIS?
Well, today Iraqi government is not able to take care. The international community must support Iraq.
So you want to
outsource? If not, they cannot.
Outsource your military to somewhere else to take care of what's happening within your own country?
Excuse me. Our army today is in such a situation they cannot take care of everywhere.
The US
as my friend says now, it's almost sectarianism very strong, and international technology. We don't want to kill everybody, because we have to separate the good tribal people which is disappointed of government or unhappy of government, not to push them to the Daesh and ISIS. They are different. Over 80% of people are unhappy maybe, or are disappointed of government. So those are our people. Okay. Maybe 10 to 15% are ISIS and international terrorism coming to Iraq.
Sure. Zena.
There are 1.8 million Iraqis inside Iraq who have been internally displaced, and the government has done nothing for them. This regime in Iraq in the last few years has always been at the top 3 most corrupt regimes in the world. So to expect them to do anything, I mean, now after all of these weeks, they don't really have a plan in place to even protect Baghdad. What did they do? They called on these sectarian militias, so they are contributing to the lawlessness itself. And again, we go back to 2003, when militias were integrated into the army, and when the sectarian approach was the basis for creating this new political regime. So of course it's going to produce more sectarianism.
Both you and Caldo mentioned sectarianism. We actually have a video comment here from Gopi. Take a listen to this real quick.
I think to stop the exodus of Christians and to bring them back to Mosul, the Iraqi government has to pursue a policy of national integration and work towards a unity government. Secondly, I think the Kurdish minority has to be assuaged so that the country is not split up into three halves. And thirdly and finally, I think the Maliki administration has to stop this sectarian policy because it is doing more harm than good for his administration currently.
So Sinan, you're talking about getting the Maliki government to stop this. Is there any chance for reform at this point, or do you feel like Maliki would have to step down for any progress to kind of proceed?
I mean, Maliki has to step down because he's a total failure, but many Iraqis have written and voiced their idea that this is a moment of existential crisis where there should be a new government of national unity and actually a new constitution. And this is the time to bring in everyone and try to integrate everyone, but the Maliki government has not been doing that, and these politicians in Baghdad, they're squabbling over the spoils while the country is falling apart. Even Baghdad is under threat, and Maliki until today he's still trying to latch on, and they're taking their time choosing a Kurdish president and a Sunni prime minister. So it's the level of irresponsibility on the part of the politicians is very problematic.
I'm just going to ask you to take a pause for a moment, and gentlemen, take a pause for a moment, because I want to go back to Zena, who we spoke to, who fled from Mosul. She's living in a neighbouring town, and she hasn't lost hope that maybe she'll be able to go home one day. Have a listen to this.
نريد نرجع لبيوتنا، نريد مثل ما كنا نكون، نحن تعايشنا سنين مع اخوتنا الاسلام ومحبي وماكو شيء بيناتنا، وكثيرين لحد الان يخابرونا ومتاثرين على الشيء اللي صار. وين علوة؟ يعني هذا الحلم نريد يتحقق. نحن ما نحب نهاجر، نحب نبقى ببلدنا.
Unizem, we're in the last closing minutes of this program. What would you say to people like Zena who really want to go back to their homes and they can't because of IS? What hope do they have?
Well, I do agree 100%. As my friend before a few minutes, he spoke about the new government to be fully representative, and a political consensus will reflect positively on ground on the people, on the tribal people everywhere, and they will cooperate with the government which is representing them.
What hope does Zena have?
Get rid of this ISIS.
Okay, what hope does Zena have? She wants to go back home. What hope does she have?
I agree with her 100%. I said yes, we have to support them, we have to protect them, we have to bring them back to their homes. That's the right solution.
Right.
And I will say Baghdad has to coordinate with everywhere to bring back the trust of people and tribes, and then Daesh will be the small minority will be fleeing from country soon.
Sadly.
All right, let me just end for this part of the program. Gentlemen, we're going to take you all to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com, so to be continued. So hold all of those thoughts. But going back to Omar and the community, what do you have?
We have this sentiment that we're seeing expressed a lot actually online. Rahmatullah Sheikh tweets in saying, it seems like both the Islamic State and the Iraqi government have very little regard for Iraqi lives, Muslims or Christians, and innocents have to suffer because of it.
So in this conversation is obviously so much more than Christians leaving Mosul, the second city of Iraq. Why is it so significant?
Because the country is losing its, the country's map is being torn apart. I liken it always to an orchard or a garden that's using its trees one by one and being burnt. So for Zena, she is the collateral damage, and sadly the world, Iraqi government, Iraq and the world has let her down, because this is primarily an Iraqi problem, but this is the product of what has been happening in Iraq in the last 10 years. This is the collateral damage that people try to put under the rug. Real people losing their life and their house, and they're done.
That's Sinan Atoon. He's an Iraqi novelist and poet. We'll also have with us Unidem. He is an MP, a Christian MP, and we also have Kaudo Ogana, and he's an Iraqi Christian. So we will take all of our guests into the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. On our next program, we'll be looking at female genital cutting in immigrant communities in the UK and the US. And we talk to activists who are determined to stop the practice. Until then, we'll see you online. Thanks for watching. Hello, this is the Streams Online post show. We've been talking about the conditions for Iraqi Christians who've been forced to leave the city of Mosul under the orders of the Islamic State group. There's a little bit of juicy stuff that Zena was telling me, that little gap between the main show and the post show. Let's do a recap.
Well, you and others think that, you know, someone is going always back to 2003. Is that? I
said actually, this is a very circular conversation. We keep going back to 2003.
Yes,
and then
because frankly, the way the war was pitched to the American people is that it's removing dictatorship. That's one thing. The other part was destroying a state. And sadly, a lot of Iraqis wanted Saddam to be removed, but destroying a state in an imperial adventure, it's not. States take 100 years to be built. The Iraqi state was built in the beginning of 20th century. It's not Saddam Hussein. When you dismantle a state and then you realize, oh, I can't put it back together, and then you leave, and Iraqis pay the price. And the politicians, the architects of the Iraq war, are today pontificating on mainstream media. It's obscene. These people are them. All their predictions were wrong, and their policies caused the displacement and the death of tens of thousands of people, and they're still going around pontificating about Iraq.
So we have people who actually agree that the U.S. is responsible essentially for breaking it. We have Ahsan here who tweets in saying the U.S. must take those refugees, those Iraqi Christians who are being forced to leave, because the U.S. destroyed Iraq and its peace, and therefore it has that responsibility. Yunadem, do you think that the U.S. currently has a specific exceptional responsibility to try to figure out how to make Iraq better?
Well, first of all, the U.S. takes some responsibility of this bad situation of today. But again, I will say this is a proxy war between some major sectarian powers in the region. And so America has to support us by technology, not by sending forces on ground. Maybe the technology of America, they know of every single Daesh or ISIS, where he is and how he's moving, and to avoid innocent people shooted by Sukhoi or by Iraqi pilots, so they can do something, surgery by less taxes on the Iraqi community, and bring again rule of order on ground. Support the regime not to empower Mr. Maliki or anybody else, but to build the state, as my friend said. The Iraqi state needs to be built again. Rule of order must be there. And there is huge corruption. They are happy of unstable situation. Either oil smugglers or other things, or ISIS or Al-Qaeda, everybody is free there. And tomorrow will be a big problem in the regional level.
One sentence.
On every single neighbor.
And maybe U.S. can tell Saudi Arabia not to support these terrorist organizations. Saudi Arabia, the main ally, which is the main sponsor of a lot of these terrorist groups. That's very simple.
It's not Saudi Arabia only.
No, you said all these regional powers.
It's not only Saudi Arabia.
Gentlemen, I'm just going to put pause on this part of the conversation for a moment, because this is what I'm not hearing. I'm hearing all the help that you're saying that you're needing, Yunadem, from the international community, particularly America, because they did the invasion in the first place. What I'm not hearing is what the Iraqi parliament is doing to protect the minorities. Can you share that with us?
Yes, I will say that. First of all, right away, I addressed a speech in parliament, and it was accepted very well, 7 points. First point, there is right away we established a committee, and the other day we were on ground on Mosul region, Nineveh Plains, with Speaker himself and the committee. Second, the allocations. Third, the salaries of the staff who fled everywhere, from Tikrit, from Mosul, from Anbar, to keep on. Government must pay them. The fourth and fifth and sixth, many points, 7 points. 2 last points, we must empower the people on ground to have local battalions or brigades to catch the land and to protect the land, not to bring people from up north or up south to protect me there. We are people of this land. We are not third degree citizenship. We have to protect ourselves. Why we are not there? Why we have no power on our lands, either Talafar or Nineveh Plain or Mosul city? Why somebody from Basra come to Mosul and take care of the security there? Why from Zakho or somewhere else? People of that land are ignored, are excluded, are intimidated historically until this moment. And from one side is Erbil, second side is Baghdad. Why? So this is another point. And last point, we are opposing demography change in that region. They are planning for demography change, and then Iraq fragmentation, 3 parts, Sunni, Shi'i, Kurdish, which we are against. We are one nation, we are one Iraq, and that's it. Some people are planning for that for some personal interests.
All right.
Some oil smuggling, for some.
All right, let me bring in Carol. Carol, we didn't have great audio for you, so I apologize about not having you on the show more. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to add something. Before all this point, we need trust between the three components, which is Shia and Sunnah. They should be serious in making the, let's say, government strong. If there is no trust between them, coordinate between them, I think the minorities will be ignored again. All the minorities, not just the Christians.
Sure. Can you tell us, Zena, about some of the other minorities? Because this story is not just about Christians. Christians are getting the headlines, but there are other groups in Iraq right now who are also being pushed out.
Well, the Iraqi Shiites in the north. I mean, Christians had this letter put on their houses and properties. The same thing happened to the Shiites in the north, and to the Shabaks, and to the Yazidis and the Mandaians.
Let me show you the letter. So this is the Arabic letter for. Oh, okay. So my producer, Aus, who is Iraqi, is giving me instructions. Aus, what would you like me to do? Would you like me to use this one? All right, this is the one, everybody. Have a look. This is our Aus Hadari show, as if you couldn't already work it out. Aus, what did you want me to tell people about this? Okay, so this is the one where they spend the N on it. Okay, so this is one. It's the same thing, though. This is the Arabic letter for N, which represents Christian. Okay, so that is being sprayed on houses around.
Yes, and the letter Ra for Rafida, which is the derogatory term that jihadists use for Shiites, is being put on the house of the Shias. And I mean, everyone knows, we've all seen what ISIS does. And I just want to go back to why neighbors didn't help. As Yonadam said, because ISIS works on terrifying people by showing what it does, even to its own members that it suspects. So it's not easy when ISIS is ruling your town, because they are very extreme and very radical.
Sure.
But I just want to go back to one other thing about the division, because it's very dangerous. And if we look throughout the last 10 years, the people who are most vociferous in calling for dividing Iraq are American politicians, Joe Biden, or people.
Is this because you live in New York? Are you obsessed by Americans?
No, I'm not obsessed by Americans, but America is the strongest power on earth, and America was occupying Iraq, and American politicians such as Zalmay Khalilzad, who was the American ambassador in Iraq, is now the head of a large consortium that consults for the Kurdish regional government, and there are billions of dollars at stake. So it's not because I'm obsessed with America, but because the billions of dollars all go through New York, and the Kurds now are selling their oil in Texas, and ISIS is selling its oil to Turkey. So the economic aspect is very important. And the US is currently the most powerful player in the region itself, through its allies and through its politics.
So we have this tragic situation that happens to exist on the ground right now, and we're asking people what they think would be practical ways to get about it, not just wishful thinking. Romina here says rewind with a question mark at the end. You know, unfortunately, we're out of a time machine. Ricardo here says what we need is a miracle for the Christians of Mosul because the world has abandoned them. Again, we're out of machines for miracles. And we have Nirouj here who says protecting Iraqi Christians would only be a temporary and partial solution to the problem. The country must be partitioned. So, Yunadem, apart from wishful thinking of trying to hold Iraq together, having reached this stage, do you think that we're heading, unfortunately, I think everybody would agree that unfortunately, towards really partitioning the country as the inevitable outcome of the sectarian disaster that is unfolding in the country?
Yes, there is, but they are a small minority, the most extreme people, yes. But going back for N and R, let me speak about that, and then I'll be back to your question.
Wow, this politician is taking up a lot of our time. Go ahead.
Don't forget S for Sunni.
Okay.
The Ubaidi sheikh and tribal sheikhs fled to Sulaymaniyah, and they blow up their houses. And Sheikh of Shammar, they are now in Baghdad, hiding themselves here in Baghdad. And 63 people in one village, Al-Zawiya, genocide, the Al-Jaburi tribe, all Sunnis. And it is for against everybody. Don't obey those people. It's not only against Christian or against Turkmen or against everybody. Don't obey them. Yes, they are 15%, but they are the power controlling everything on their hands. Now going back for division of the country, yes, sir, there are some people, the most extremists among Sunni, the most extremists among the Kurds, the most extremists among Shia. Yes, they are for division. They think that when they divide the country will be stable. No, it will not be stable. We will have 3-4 decades killing each other, and then we will be back again. It is from Mandali to jail, and then to Nukhayb, and then to Zubair, over 1,000 kilometer length, all Sunni Shia together. What will happen there? So in addition to that, Baghdad city itself, Kirkuk city, Diyala city, and Tikrit, everywhere is mixed community. Right. So why Americans can live together more than 300 ethnicities? Why we cannot live together? We are 2-3, all our cousins or indigenous people of that land for 1,000 years.
Sure, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you for one line, just one line, because I have to wrap up the show right now. You're all Iraqi Christians. How do you feel about being an Iraqi Christian today? Unidem. Tell me just one sentence in a response.
Yeah, for myself, I have to fight till last moment that we are people of this land. We will never leave. If everybody leave, I will try to bring them back again. And we are all cousins and brothers, no matter Arab or Kurds or Muslims or Christians. We are people of this land. We have to live together. And unfortunately, we have no Abraham Lincoln. And we have nobody, no Nelson Mandela to bring us together. The leaders, we are not that much patriot leaders, but sectarian leaders. We have to fight and to bring us together, reconciliation and solidarity of Iraqis together. And our country is not Somalia.
All right, yeah. Kaudo, your one sentence. How does it feel to be an Iraqi Christian right now?
We are indeed people, and we are not Sunni, Ahl al-Dhimma. We will not accept Ahl al-Dhimma. We are Iraqi. We are Christian, we are Iraqi. Christian is our belief. We are Assyrian. Our history, Assyrian, Chaldean, our history is more than 6,000 years. So we have root here in Iraq. Iraq is Christian, and Christian Iraq.
Grandsons,
so we will not accept
Syria and Babylon.
Okay, all right. That's a lot. That's a long sentence, but I appreciate the sentiment behind it. Sinan, your one sentence as an Iraqi.
I identify as an Iraqi first. Our other affiliations are accidental and they come second. But sadly, Iraqi Christians and their history and their memories are part of the collateral damage of this war and this occupation. And it's very sad because Iraq will never be the same it was again. If it will ever be, it will take a long time, and not miracles, but action on the part of people, especially those who live in so-called democracies, to lobby their governments and push them. This is not about miracles, this is about political action.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you in this discussion. I'm going to move things on a little bit now. Omar Badar, it's been a pleasure working with you. But the brains and beauty of the stream comes back on Monday. That's right. So Malika Bilal will be sitting right here as we tackle a really tough subject on Monday: female genital cutting in immigrant communities in the UK and the US. We talk to activists who are determined to stop the practice. Until then, see you online. Take care.